exciting is that this is the beginning of a journey, and the known destination, at least in the short time, is that we're going to meet a conference. So it's going to be really wonderful. I mean, I hope that by the time we get to July, we'll actually consider that we've got a sense of colleagueship, that we want to collaborate, we want to meet each other. Some people may either have developed new friendships. What I want to do, though, tonight is just jump in with what I've randomly decided would be a great way of starting. But I do want to show you one thing before we actually look at some music, and that is just some amazing functionality of my meeting here. And so this morning I just sat down and I thought, as you all sit there wondering, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And are we going to have to be auditioned and performed and show conducting technique and sing? Let me just reassure you, you don't have to do anything. You can actually just sit there and fall asleep, and I'll wake you up in a couple of hours. Obviously, the more you contribute, the more you'll get out of it. But frankly, we're just equal partners in just launching something and deciding where it goes. So I thought, you know, if I was you, what would be the things that I thought that might be dealt with today? And I'm going to just share the list. We're not going to talk about it because I realize that I'm about to set the cat amongst the pigeons, but I will just give you a brief exposure to it. So this is a list that I prepared of issues. And that's not it. So let's... Did you see a list come up?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You did. So it did work. Forgive me. Let's go again. The irony is that I can't see it. There it is. So I just put this all down, and I don't need to read it out because we can all read English, but this is the sort of thing that we could address over the next few weeks and so forth. So I'd listed all the things to do with how you pick music. I'm going to deliberately go on quite quickly. Issues to do with the choir, recruiting new singers, figuring out what their abilities are, how you retain singers. Some people emailed me and spoke about, you know, getting singers to come on time. I like this one: the room, the chairs, the acoustic, the ventilation, and the ventilation and pencils. And there's everything from structuring rehearsal, accompanist issues, getting the choir to look at you, and so forth. Then issues to do with performance, issues when singing at services, and, you know, some of my favorites: strategies for dealing with difficult choristers, the relationship between conductor and cantor soloist and or rabbi, budgets. This one is, I would need a month. There's a time for the congregation to sing and a time to listen. Is participation limited to singing out loud? And of course, Sarita, there we go. So I press this and you're all back. So those are all things that we could talk about. But I thought, for all the conducting workshops that I've either attended or that I've structured, the one thing that I can't stand is when half an hour later you're still all talking. Hello, my name's da-da-da, and I've been in the choir. So I thought, let's just make some music. Let's just get down and dirty. And there'll be plenty of time for all of the things of, you know, organizing a rehearsal. I mean, it's just boring. So I sent you some music. Some of you, I hope, have had a chance to look at it or to listen to it. And I'm just going to jump in. And frankly, you can interrupt at any point. I know it feels like a monologue, and everybody at least has British sensibilities, but here I am in North America, and everybody just interrupts, and everybody just shouts at each other, as you know. So just, you know, throw up a hand or unmute and just start talking. So what I'd like you to do is to open Vishamaru to start. You could look at it on your laptop, but I presume that most of you have printed it out. And what I thought to myself was that I want to start encouraging people to realize that there are all sorts of things that you can see and hear which will actually make your job so much easier if you become sensitized to the things to look for. Because, for example, if I said to you, how many white Mercedes did you see today? You might think, well, I have no idea. But if I do that, and then when you know, tomorrow you're looking out, you'd be amazed. It's just the idea of becoming mindful. And I should say the following. I mean, we have people in the room who are doing this for the love of their synagogue, for the love of music, for the love of Judaism. You have other people who this is their career. You have other people who realize that if they weren't doing the job they were doing, there frankly would not be the wonderful music in your synagogues. Some people are just starting out, and some people have been doing it for years. Some people have 3 singers and some have 30. So we just need to be respectful and aware of the fact that everybody's coming from a different place. So if you hear something that you were taught 50 years ago, try not to roll your eyes, or you can roll them internally. But if you hear something that you feel is challenging or difficult, then maybe think, okay, I'm not there yet, but it's something that I aspire to. Perhaps this is something that in a year's time, this is something I can hope to be doing. So I'm just casting the net wide. And of course, you're going to be sending me individual emails. Some of you may not feel comfortable talking out loud. So you can feel free just to email me afterwards and say what worked for you, what didn't work for you, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like more of, and so forth. So I assume everybody's found the music. So let me just take you through some sort of role play. Imagine that this was given to you. And obviously, we have to assume certain things, because obviously if you'd picked this, you would have picked it for certain reasons, and you therefore know something about the piece. We'll talk another time about how do you go about picking a good piece of music that's appropriate for your group, appropriate for your community, appropriate for your soloist, whether it's to the taste of your congregation. That's for another time. But for whatever reason, this piece is presented to you. So what I'm interested in figuring out, and it's not putting people on the spot, but I will ask you to weigh in just a moment. As you just quickly look through this piece, I'm just wondering, in the following categories, what jumps out to you? And these are the things that I'm thinking of. Choir issues, so things that are easy, things that are difficult, things that are challenging vocally in terms of pitch, things that are challenging in terms of rhythm. From a conducting point of view, are there any particular moments where there's at least something to be talked about, even if we all know the answer? Are there challenges with regard to interpretation? Are there things that we should immediately notice that make our job teaching this easier? For example, we say, oh, that's the same as that. So once I've taught, oh yeah, but it's different words. But never mind, once I've taught them, and so on and so forth. So the piece starts as follows. So I'll go first, and then if anybody wants to jump in, you can jump in. So of all the things that I noticed there, the most exciting thing is the fact that everybody's supposed to be singing the same thing. I would say that's probably number one. And if you just look through, everybody's in unison. Admittedly, the tenors and basses are singing an octave below the sopranos and altos, but that's something really important to notice. But of course, that raises the issue that is it easier to get your choir to sing in unison, or is it better when they're singing their own thing? So some of you will be aware of the fact that unison is one of the most difficult things to get, because when the human ear hears that it's supposed to be the same, every little squeak and so forth, every little change of word is noticeable. Whereas when you divide it into 4, you've only got 4 lots of things that can go wrong. Think about it. You've got 4 parts. Whereas whenever it is unison, however many people in the choir, that's a number of differences that you could have. Anybody want to point out a conducting challenge? I say challenge, it's just something that one would have to be aware of.
There's pauses and the time signature changes.
Right, exactly. So what we're being brought to is our attention that on the second line, that's bar 4, a piece of music that has been going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So that could be scary for some people. At another time, we can talk about, are you helping yourself if you're conducting like this? Let's go from the end of the first line, which is the third measure, where it says, El et ha-Shabbat. If you're somebody who conducts like this, beating the notes rather than beating time, El et ha-Shabbat la asot, then there's no challenge, because you're just hitting the notes. Another time we can talk about the advantages of actually not beating the notes, but actually beating the rhythms. Because I don't know what you do when the music's going. No. I mean, it's ridiculous. Clearly you go, na 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 na. That's beating a rhythmic pattern. So some people are sitting there saying, oh, please, for goodness sake, I know how to beat. Be patient for a moment as I just share with other people the following issue. Just try this, just humor me. Are people familiar with the theme from Colonel Bogey? Yeah, okay. So this is what I'd like you to do. If you can, if it's easy to do, that's fine. And obviously we don't know if you're doing it, if you're not. Do you have both feet on the floor? If not, if you could get out of the lotus position or whatever yoga. So what I'd like you to do is move your feet in alternately, sort of left, right, left, right, left, right, in tune, in time rather to the tune. So it would be left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Okay? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't feel right. But now what I'd like you to do is to march. So we're going to go left, right, left, right, left, right, ready, go. That feels natural, Nobody says, I prefer it the other way. So that's what we're talking about. You can go, na, 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 to your choir, or you can go, na, 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 na. And basically you expect the choir to put in the little notes in between. So if that's something where you go, oh, I go, kol nidre v'esare, just a thought that is something that works. And I've seen professional conductors do that, but you should be doing it because there's a choice, not because there's another world that you are not aware of. So we come back to the beginning. It was pointed out that we've got a couple of challenges here. So you've got beginning of the second line, the music pauses, but it doesn't stop. Very different, the feeling of music that just stops rather than there's something going on here. So we want our choirs to think, El et ha-Shabbat. It's not et ha-Sha, stop. Et ha-Shabbat. It's still going, agreed? It's not going, but. Can you feel the sag? But. As opposed to et ha-Shabbat. It's still propelled. There's some momentum. And even in the way that they sing it, you don't want them to stop. You want the sound to continue, but the music just has a sort of small delay. There's also an issue at the beginning. How are you going to start the piece? Anybody want to jump in? How would you start the piece? I mean, assuming you've given them the note, your hands go up. Now what do you do? You could go, let's do it, okay? So I'm not going to give you any sort of preparatory beat. I'm just going to start you. We can't hear you, so you can sing anything you want. Okay, red, you missed it. So that's the issue. Choirs want to be given a preparatory beat. So there's no point in lifting up your hands if they're not ready. Because if you lift up your hands when they're not ready and they're sort of finding their music, what's the next thing you're going to do? There's nothing left except to start the piece. So my suggestion is you're not doing anything. You're just looking at the choir, and when they're ready, then you start. And everybody has different things. Maybe it's like this, maybe it's like that. the question is, you don't want to be going like that. It becomes sort of confusing. So let's say there's one hand in the air, but if you just start the, they're going to miss it. So they need some sort of preparation. And of course, that preparation helps them take a breath as well. So what are you going to do? You're going to go 1, 2, 3. Veshamaru. Really? I don't think so. I mean, the 1, 2, 3, an audible 1, 2, 3, that's not part of the piece. You certainly will go 1, 2, 1, 2. You certainly don't want to begin if you're looking at, I mean, could you imagine this? 1, 2, 3, 4. Really? With 1, 2, 3, 4 before it? So the question is, can we use gesture and an economy of gesture to get maximum results? So you could go like this. And off they're going to, they'll begin. Because there are 3 beats of music, which we don't hear. 1, 2, 3. Veshamaru. What's the minimum, though, that we need? Because we certainly don't need the 1, 2. Andre?
It depends on the tempo. If it's a very quick tempo, I might give 2 preparatory beats only. If it was a relatively slow, I'd probably only give 1 preparatory beat.
What's your recommendation then in this case?
Well, I think it's relatively slow, so you probably may get away with 1. It's probably a case of having to try it at rehearsal and see what happens.
So I think that's a very good answer. Presumably you've rehearsed with the choir.
One would hope so.
Yeah, which means that it's not as though you're in front of the BBC singers and you're going live and you've never done it. And then you could imagine that you would actually need to set a tempo. But so what Andre is suggesting is that the minimum that you would need to give them is 1 beat. So this is the maximum, 1, 2, 3, Veshamaru. This is losing 1 and giving 2 and 3, 2, 3, Vesham. But this is the least amount. It's giving 3. In other words, it's giving the 3rd beat. They come in on the first quaver, or what's it called in North America? Half, it's unbelievable. 8th note, sorry. Thanks, Zoe. 8th note. So in other words, it's go. Veshamaru. Now, for safety, you could go again. 1, 2, 3. Veshamaru. But really, all you need to give them is boom. Veshamaru. So we're going through. You've started it off. What do people think about issues to do with their choir singing loud, singing soft? Does anybody want to weigh in on just a general thought about what your gesture indicates to the choir in terms of dynamics, in terms of character? And, you know, people who are experienced conductors, I mean, I know you do this all your life and you've been trained in this, but it would be lovely to hear other voices. Sarit, have you got something you could just share with us? I mean, your own thoughts about what you've found is helpful in terms of loud volume, soft volume, and so forth. Just a general thought?
Yes, first of all, can you hear me well?
Beautifully.
Hello, everybody. So our version in my choir is a tiny bit different. So we go, that's
fine.
So when it comes to, it's actually like a recitative. And
sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. What I was hoping is just a general idea about how your gestures change with any music when it's loud or when it's soft.
Basically, I will express it in my face most of the time. So when choir look at me, so it's with the hands, but also the face. So
okay, I'm deliberately making things difficult for you because I'm going to lead the witness. If I put a talus bag over your head, so you could only do it with your hands.
Okay.
Any general ideas
Of
about
course.
how you'd suggest to people?
Yes. So you either, if your gestures are bigger, then theoretically it would be louder. When your gestures are becoming smaller, then usually it means that more softly or gently. That's one way. It also depends on what height of your gesture is going to be. If it's here, tends to be lighter. If you're down there, it tends to be more heavy singing.
So that's really helpful. So for some people, that might be coming as news, and to other people, they all may, oh, come on, everybody knows this. But in fact, not everybody knows this. And it's amazing that volunteer choir members who maybe you've recruited because you've heard them singing in shul, or they've been recommended to you, perhaps we assume that the highway code related to singing in choirs is actually known to them. I put it to you that it may not be. We may assume that somebody seeing this is just a human being who realizes that that's a delicate sound. Here's the problem. There are many choirs who are ignoring their choir directors. And the reason why they're ignoring them is because their humanity and the musicianship that the choir members have stops them from singing what they see. Let me say that again. Their musicianship, their humanity stops them from singing what they see because they know that the music's supposed to be soft. The third line is a perfect example. They know that it's supposed to sound like this. This is the third line on the first page. So they've got an instinct that it's serene, that it's peaceful, that it's luminous, that it's delicate, that it's light. They also see there's a piano, which is indicating that it's softer than what came before. They can also feel the nature of the music. So when their conductor is doing this, they just ignore it because they're sensitive and they're thoughtful. Similarly, when the conductor is attempting to get generous sounds, large vowels, committed, intense singing, and the conductor's going, it doesn't encourage the choir, which then raises the biggest challenge. What would happen if you stopped conducting? Would it be better or would it be worse? Or would it be the same? If it would be worse, well done. If it would be the same, I'm going to say well done with some proviso because it means you've trained them very well. I think I'm going to have to start that again. If you stop conducting and it's better, you've got a problem. If you stop conducting and then the choir sings better, you've got a problem. If, when you stop conducting, it gets worse, well done. Because there are so many choirs who are singing in spite of what their choir directors are doing. So I would encourage you to think, just as Sarit said, about the size of your gesture, which isn't to say that you can't rehearse a full symphony orchestra and with a small flick of your baton, get a massive sound. I don't want anybody to get into the habit of thinking that this generates sound. Think about it. This does not generate sound. So be careful of wanting more sound from your choir, and eventually you become like a Muppet And it's so big, you're actually in Wembley Stadium, but there are actually 4 little biddies standing in front of you. And you're conducting as though you're Leonard Bernstein in, some huge venue. And there's just little Sadie, Jaime sitting there, holding their little binder. And you're just conducting like this. And they're just singing their little sort of, and you want more. It's actually a law of diminishing returns. The more you give that drug to the choir, the more they will need in order to get volume. So sometimes you actually need to just stop doing your Muppet gestures and just say, can you sing that a bit louder? It's actually very simple. Be careful that you don't get bigger and bigger and bigger. You can also just very clearly, very lovingly just say, we need to sing this softer. And I would also encourage you to do the following. When you ask for something, you must decide whether you've got it or not. It's fascinating. If you asked any of your kids to do something, you would monitor whether they did or not. You've given an instruction. Sweetie, can you just pick up your toys? Grandma's coming. When the toys are not picked up, you'd notice. Now, you may choose to pick them up yourself. That's a whole nother discussion. But when you say to your choir, instead of, let me just change the sound. Okay, so you've started doing that and you're saying that they're singing it loudly. Why? So you decide, I'm just going to reduce my gesture. Eventually you stop conducting and they're still yelling at you. You could say half the volume and they go, and you say, okay, let's turn to the next bar. What? Hang on. You just said half the volume. Did you get half the volume? Now, it's all very well as a teacher, as a leader, to make a choice. So I'm just looking at the hand of Galaxy S8. It's all very well to make a choice of saying, I'm going to leave it now. It's not something I'm going to do, but at least it deserves a comment. I actually would be looking for even softer than that, but we'll come back to it. You don't want to ignore it. The number of times that people think that what they've said means that the thing is now fixed. Basses, I need you to sing that note higher. Okay, let's move on to the next. I mean, what does that do? It achieves nothing. So we're moving forward. We've discovered, just to summarize so far, we've got an issue of how to start the piece. I'd love to address, without getting on my hobby horse, what I spoke about in my email about correct Hebrew stress. So we need to understand that at different times in Jewish history, people pronounced Hebrew differently. And at certain times they were sensitive to a cultural norm. And in other cases, we're singing music now, probably with modern Hebrew pronunciation. I imagine that amongst Reform synagogues in the UK, it's unlikely that anybody's using Ashkenaz pronunciation. So if you look in the only reference we have to Lewandowski's original music, which is the music that's been printed, it would be V'shomeru, not V'shamaru. The problem is that he went V'shamru v'nei Yisrael, V'shamru. But if we actually take out a siddur and read it, we go V'shamaru v'nei Yisrael. Some of us would actually even say, is it V'shamru or V'shamaru? And you're saying, oh, I didn't realize there was an issue. Really? Well, it's an issue. Is it V'shamru, or is it V'shamaru? And what do I do if it goes V'shameru? Because it's been transliterated M-E. Do I know that it's not M-E, me, as in M-E-H, but it's M, M apostrophe. There's no vowel associated with a shava. And it's not V'shamiru. There's no vowel. So my challenge over the last number of years has been the following. If we're singing the same text, or if the soloist is chanting it, I'm looking for consistency. That's just my personal values, because otherwise it's sort of a bit of a game. of just performing bits of music. Whereas what I want to say is, we're doing this in real time. It's not an act, and the sentiments which are embodied in some of these prayers, they're life-changing things. Admittedly, when you're doing, which probably isn't even in the Reform prayer book, but when you're doing things about sacrifices or temple things, in some cases, actually a barbecue recipe. You should take 2 lambs, a bit of olive oil, some rosemary, you put it on the barbecue, 2.5 hours later, and they said, here we go, God, this is a... I get it. I mean, you're not asking for anything. But what about when you're praying for somebody's health? What about a prayer for the new month? A lot of people relate to that, even if they don't believe, or they're not quite sure what their relationship is, or they don't think of themselves as being spiritual, or they don't have a background. It doesn't really matter. When they look down and say, hang on a second, so you want healthy, you want things to go well at work, you want peace on the planet, yeah, I can sign on to that. So the issue is, you're actually doing an activity unlike anything else. You're not reading the news, because that's just reading what somebody else has written. You're reporting. You're not on the opera stage where you're acting, pretending that you want the sword to come out from, or you want the, you know, the heroine or hero to come back safely, or you're not acting out the part of, you know, singing song. This is real. I mean, it's more real for cantors, but for you guys who are providing this, yeah, there's the sword. Can you see it, everybody? Julie's got an actual sword. Is it a lightsaber, or is it a... Okay, I just couldn't see. Oh no, sorry, it's Princess Leia. I thought you were Darth Vader for a moment.
It's a Highland dancing sword.
Gillian's very happy now. My point is, for me, it's real. So I can't mispronounce the word. I can't say, yeah, but it was... Go ahead.
As long as you don't ask me to wear a kilt.
Well, I'm wearing one now. You just can't see it. Mish didn't find that funny. Okay. My point is, and we'll get off this subject, for me, I've got to fix the Hebrew. I've got to fix the way the words are pronounced. It's not a reflection on anything or anybody. It's just we have to make it make sense. And I can't say the same word. You know, even when people in English, when they perhaps mispronounce a word or they stress the word, they do it consistently wrongly. They don't one day say happy birthday and then the next go happy birthday. So if they don't say it the way that's generally accepted to be the way that most people say it, happy birthday, whatever they do that's different, they consistently do it differently. But there's no way that I personally can go for one piece, Veshamruvane, and for another piece go Veshamaruva, and then go Veshamru, and then go Veshamaru. What is the word? How do you say it? And, you know, the bigger problem for me is, all right, you know, we can choose to differ, but Adonai, and then 2 seconds later, Adonai, and then 3 seconds later, Adonai. What is this, the Trinity? So I just put it to you that once you've made a choice, or once you're aware of it, you may never, if you're somebody who ever does Birkat Hamazon in your congregation, or something you learned at summer camp, for some of us, who hative, who mative, who yative lanu, makes no sense at all. We don't even know what language it is. Nobody says that. Hu hativ, hu mativ, hu yativ lanu. Nobody goes lanu. In fact, I've even tested this theory with people who are just learning to read Hebrew, but have heard Hebrew all their lives. And you say, do you by chance know the formula for a Jewish blessing? They say, yes. I say, which one are you familiar with? They say, I know lighting candles. I know Hanukkah candles. I even know how to make a blessing over wine. And I say, can you share it? They say, of course. They're proud. This is something very important to them. They go, Eloheinu melech ha'olam. I have yet to find a single person on planet Earth, or indeed on any other planet, who says melech. They go melech. Nobody goes melech. They go melech. So how can you sing melech? Azai melech, shemo nikra. Listen again. Azai melech, shemo. That's not even Hebrew. So what are you going to do? Uzi Chitman was a remarkable songwriter. He's really famous. His canon of repertoire, his compositions, it's known by the world of people who are into Israeli pop music. And he wrote, Azai Melech, Azai. Are you going to sing that in shul? Does it really, really bother you? Or is it just, you're not used to it? If you'd grown up going, Azai Melech, is that awful? Is it really bothering you that much? You see, I put it to you that it isn't, because I go to synagogues where they don't know it any other way. So when they hear it the other way, here comes Saret to either confirm or deny, or to say she's leaving the meeting.
Is it okay to say something about that, or
I'd
in the
love you
middle
to.
of something?
I'd love you to.
You sure?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm sure you know from my name that I'm Israeli, right? Yes, Sarit. I'm Israeli from Israel. So my first language, mother tongue, is Hebrew, right? And actually, I agree with many of the things you say. That you cannot ignore from the fact that sometimes the composer actually composing it in a certain way. In my view, I always try to respect what the composer wanted. As for the melody, sometimes the melody goes in a certain way. And if you change it, sometimes it works, sometimes that would not work. And of course, so even pieces that I don't remember that the piece that we sing on Yom HaShoah, the one, the depressed one, is that one. I just don't remember the name. I need to look at my folder. Anyway, all the words there on the wrong stress, all of them. And I always ask myself, maybe he didn't know Hebrew or he did it on purpose. And of course, that, as you say, you cannot say Melech, but Uzi Chitman was Hebrew speaker as well. So he knows Hebrew. He's not somebody that's living abroad, doesn't speak Hebrew. So in his case, it was a conscious choice that he wanted to do the melody that way. So so my approach is, first of all, go with what the composer wants. And for example, the piece that you gave us, your arrangement, El Melech Yoshev. So my choir had that with a different accent, but the way you arrange it, I think this version, I basically taught them from the beginning because they had another version of that arrangement, but with all wrong places of stress of the Hebrew. And I told them, that's not how we say the Hebrew. So, and that sounds, actually, it makes sense. It sounds good this way. So we just better respecting the Hebrew in that case.
This is very helpful. And we're going to actually move off this because it's actually boring for some people. They're just not interested in it. And that's fine. And it's a little bit too intellectual. But Sarit, you said some very valuable things, and I'll just sort of distill some of them. Firstly, about the composer's intentions. And I think that's something that we need to talk about, because so often actually looking at a piece of music, conductors often defy the intentions because they're not actually thinking what the intentions were. Secondly, there are some pieces of music that I just don't conduct. I choose not to do because I don't want to change them, but I just can't be party to something where I'm pushing something that I don't believe in, that I feel. The other thing is, Uzi Chitman was Israeli, but remember, anybody can choose anything. It doesn't make it right. So I don't feel that him mis-accenting it, I would say that wasn't important to him. Something bigger was more important to him. But for me, I would override that because, as I said to you in my email, nothing is more important than the words for me. So I can't write a tune and then search for some words that fit, which is, by the way, how a lot of Jewish composers go about writing. They have a nice melody, a nigun, something catchy, and they go searching for words that will fit in. If you speak to the real composers of the world, the first thing they do is they read through the text. They get a mood for the language, they get a mood for the rhythms, they look at which words go together. Zoe and I, Zoe has knows that I have a favorite, and so I'm sorry if I'm going to now ruin everybody's evening, but there's a very famous setting of the Ma'ariv text, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'Shalom. It's got cult status in North America. It's a composition by Craig Taubman, and it goes, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'Shalom. So I would never be able to perform that because the words are Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'Shalom. No self-respecting, forgive me, individual who let's rephrase, nobody who's bothered by making sure the right words go together could go Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'Shalom. It doesn't make sense. It's just nonsense. Similarly here, I won't make you vote because I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm just planting seeds tonight. This is just a process. I just want you to start thinking about these things. So here's the final discussion on this topic, and then we're going to get on with some more issues about rehearsals. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha V'nashuva. This again, Hashivenu Adonai Elecha V'nashuva. So we're putting the Torah back in the ark. So whatever your translation is, Hashivenu, return us. Adonai, God, Lord. Elecha, to you. V'nashuva, and we'll return, we'll come back. So how do you want to group it? So here are all the permutations. Hashivenu, Adonai, Eloheinu, L'Shalom. 1, 1, 1, 1. Hashivenu, Adonai. Sorry, I mixed up my things. Hashivenu, Adonai, Elecha, V'nashuva. So we could do it, split it in half. Hashivenu, Adonai, Elecha, V'nashuva. We could do 3 plus 1. Hashivenu, Adonai, Elecha, V'nashuva. Anyway, so when you ask most people, they say 2 plus 2. That's the top answer. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha V'nashuva. Doesn't it sort of feel right? Hashivenu Adonai Elecha V'nashuva. Makes absolutely no sense. Because the Hebrew is Hashivenu Adonai Elecha, sort of comma, V'nashuva. So the question is, how are you going to sing this? Hashivenu Adonai Elecha. Fantastic. Lewandowski wrote, Hashivenu Adonai Elecha V'nashuva. But how are you going to, Hashivenu Adonai. So now we've stopped on Adonai, and now we're going to carry on Elecha. I mean, if you think about melodies that you sing, are you doing it? Does it make any sense? And all we're saying is, if you've now lost me and you're just sleeping with your eyes open, all I'm saying to you is, how do you feel about once upon a time there lived? And if you say, sounds good to me, then we've nothing more to say. But if you have a problem with that and you say, no, it's once upon a time there lived, then I rest my case. Let's push on with some of this music. So if you came along and I started off, and clearly, you know, we have so much that we could talk about, but I'll remind you where this started. I was saying to you, when you look at the piece of music, what hits you? What hits you in terms of difficulty for the choir, difficulties for you, challenges, and so forth. So I'm going to fast track this so we can then move on to some more pieces. And I'll just go in order, although I wouldn't see this. So the first thing I would do if I'm starting is I would do an overview. So I'm looking through, I can see that everybody's singing the same thing, rhythms. I can see, as Andre pointed out, we've got some time changes. I've got to figure out how I'm going to start the piece. And in the middle of the third line, it suddenly goes into something different. The character changes. We've got the challenge of the fact that people are singing repeated notes. So immediately I sing repeated notes. We know as singers, we know as instrumentalists, accompanying choirs, we know that as choristers, that repeated notes have a tendency to go somewhere, and we don't want them to go anywhere. We have to encourage our choirs to be mindful of the fact that if they think the autopilot is going to get through it, they're not, which means your basses are likely to go Beni, if they even get that interval high enough, because you may have the challenge of Beni uven. So that's the first thing. Are you hearing that for whatever reason they're not getting there? But let's say they nail that. You're delighted, you're thrilled. Ni, and then you hear Ni uven b'nei Isra ra ra. So what are you going to do to encourage them? Maybe it's enough to ask them to be aware of it, not to criticize what they're doing, but to simply point out there's a vocal challenge. We actually have to do something mentally to ensure that that pitch stays the same. And lo and behold, everybody has that. So when your sopranos go, and suddenly the major chord becomes a minor chord, you have to hear that. And in a loving, open-hearted way, figure out how are you going to lead them to sing. So then they say, we can't breathe. So what are we going to do? Are we going to know that we have to introduce these people who are volunteering, as indeed maybe you are too, who've come after a heavy day at work, and they don't want to be yelled at, and they don't want to be beaten up, and they don't want to be verbally abused. If they wanted that, they'd stayed home. So there they are, and they want you to love them. And they want you to lead them to a place that they don't yet know they can reach. To go from where they are to somewhere better so they can self-assess of saying, wow, I started only being able to do 2 push-ups, and now I can do 4. And next week I'm going to do 6. Any thoughts about deconstructing the music? Meaning looking at Beni uven Bnei Israel and figuring out how is this music created and what are the elements that need to be correct in order for this music to really start to shine beyond if people are singing the right pitches or the right rhythms. So I just want to go down for those people who want to go to a sort of really advanced stage. If you were deciding which parts to play off against each other, who are doing similar things where we want to ensure that they're aligned. Little brackets here. I'm from the school that says, I don't want to hear individual voices. I'm not putting in all of this time in order to have on the note paper, blah, 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 synagogue choir, when it really isn't a choir. It's a gathering of human beings who are just singing the same piece with me doing an interpretive dance in front of them. Because a choir means something else. It means we have a sole single mission. We're looking to suppress our individuality for the bigger whole. It means that we want everybody within the section to be moving towards some sort of an ideal sound. So if somebody's going, and somebody's going, how are you going to mix the steel wool with the cotton wool? How are you going to blend potato kugel with chicken soup? So having said that, who would you have sing with each other? Let me answer it. I'd like to see that the altos and the basses are doing the same thing. Because after the Beni, they're together. I'm not interested in whether or not the sopranos are adding the third. We'll worry about thirds later. Let's tune our fifths. Let's treat this like violins. You don't hear the violins tuning up going, I'm not going to waste time bringing a string sound. You hear fifths. Let's get the fifths right. So once the altos and the tenors and the basses are doing it, now let's get our fifths absolutely perfect. Let's put back the altos. Right, that's locked in. This is not flat pack furniture from the 1970s. This is not MFI furniture that's moving 2 days after you construct it. This is solid furniture now. This is on Antiques Roadshow. This is furniture that's inside Windsor Castle and it's locked. You could try to destroy this table. It would need an act of God. That table's not going anywhere for 1,000 years. So when that's locked in, pop in your sopranos, suddenly you've got something magical. Also, when we start matching our vowels, matching the vowels, when you hear this, you'll get goosebumps. Your goosebumps will be bigger in size when you come out of the unison. And people go, and nobody wants to burst the bubble because you're blowing this bubble and you can see the colors of the rainbow. And suddenly there are no faxes, there are no cell phones, there are no kids yelling. It's Shabbat. Now, you may be in a noisy synagogue, so I realize that I could be contradicted. If I really want to be controversial, if I haven't been already, that's why this music which some people say sounds like church. It has a certain sound to it, but I would take this any day, given that it was Louis Lewandowski who wrote it, then V'shamu b'nei Yisrael, not decrying that. But if I have to pick one for my desert island, I don't need this. That for me isn't serenity, peace, the week coming to an end, filling our lives with different energies. When you're teaching this, you would probably say, aha, 2 unison things, 2 harmonized things, and an ending. Here's a little nugget for you. 9 out of 10 choir conductors, when they're asked, where do you start teaching a piece? And I don't mean the location of your rehearsal. At what point in the piece do you start teaching it? They look at you as though you're an idiot, or not an idiot, but they don't understand the question. And then they say, I start at the beginning. I put it to you that whenever you can start anywhere else, start somewhere else. And you're going, really? But you don't read a story in the wrong order. Why would you go through the music? Because of the fact that you're not rehearsing the story. Here, we're beginning a process of assuming that nobody knows it, and at some point they have to own it. So I'm just going to do a little quick snapshot as time marches on. You've come into the rehearsal and you're thinking, nobody reads music. What am I going to do? We'll address that another time. We've got to the point where somehow you're going to teach this. You've got some readers, you've got some who don't read. Maybe you have an accompanist, maybe you're sitting at the piano, or perhaps you've sent them their parts in advance. Remember, there's a technological beauty, ease of that's presented to us today that we didn't even have 20 years ago. You can actually do all of this in advance if you're willing to give up the time. Pull out your iPhone, pull out your laptop, record a sound file, if it can be at least not just a part in the middle of nowhere that can give them some reference. And you say, I expect you to do your work. Download the PDF, here's the email. You've got to know the notes when you come to rehearsal. Some people are actually creating a rod for their back, but other people, they don't have time. And so I understand that. But I put it to you, I would encourage you to think about what you could do in advance so that you don't tear your hair out banging through notes. On that point, the number of people, choir masters, choir directors who do record them but they record it in such a way that what the choir member ends up coming back with, they have to spend so much time changing. The idea is not to perform a slow version of the alto part as though they're a bat mitzvah student. And the problem with teaching students is many teachers, I'm getting further and further away from what I was saying, but it's the same thing. They record the way that the Torah reading or the Haftarah or the Brachot go in a teach yourself tempo. But they then never introduce them to the sound of what happens once you've learned it. So this Vayomer Adonai never gets turned into Amen Vayomer Adonai. I don't mean in pitch, I mean in delivery. So be careful of Eini Uvein B'nei Yisrael. And imagine if you had a choir member who's listening to your MP3. So it goes something like this. Hello, altos. This is Stephen. I'm going to go through the alto part for V'shamaru. So you've done that opening, and now you go, Beini uven b'nei Yisrael. So your altos, if they've done it, they come along sounding like a bunch of robots. They go, Beini uven b'nei Yisrael. Whereas when you hear, Beini, or better, Beini uven b'nei, it gives it musical context. So it may be that they can't learn it when you sing it the way that you want it sung eventually, but perhaps you say, let's go through it slowly. Then you say once more. You're actually doing a rehearsal, because that's what you would do in rehearsal. Why not do this all in advance? I mean, I even record, make recordings and say, we better do that again. You made a mistake on the recording, because I know that they made a mistake, because everybody makes a mistake. So I say, no, we better do that again. It's F sharp, not F natural, because everybody who gets that thing sings in F. And people go, how did you know that? So think about that. You could actually prepare all the ingredients in advance. When you start cooking, it's quite annoying, when you have to start everything from scratch. But if you actually have to begin with sauteed onions, wouldn't you rather have the onions already chopped up for you? Wouldn't it rather be, Martha Stewart with everything prepared and it's all there ready to go? Well, why not prepare your own onions? So you're in the rehearsal and you say, where shall I start? Well, you probably would go, Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Why? Because I don't want to start at the beginning. Because you'll always start at the beginning. If you track the number of times a bar is done over, let's say, 4 months, from the moment you start rehearsing it to the moment you first perform it, and you'll say, 4 months, Stephen, what are you talking about? It's 4 years. And others of you are saying, 4 months, 4 minutes. If you track the number of times you do a particular bar, I can guarantee that unless you're using a different method, the first bar gets done more than anything else. Because every single time you start the piece, you start at the beginning. So how about considering, A, starting the piece with the thing that people will remember, which is how you ended. Now you could say, yes, but in this particular case, the attraction of starting with the unison, which means we can make a lot of progress, overrides that. There's another advantage, by the way, in working on pieces of working on sections of the piece that come later. Think about this. If you start at the beginning and you travel along, you just are driving and driving and driving into the unknown. Where you start is where you are, yeah, at the rehearsal. They've never seen this piece, and they're now driving into the unknown. And wherever you go, it's unknown. You haven't been there before. What about if you had this bit already done? So you start at bar, let's say, pick up to bar 14. So we're about to go into the second page, all right? So you get that ready. Okay, so that's learned. When you eventually start Beini Uven B'nai Israel, which is back on page 1 in the middle of the page, it's bar 8. So this is learned, this isn't learned. Look what happens. You teach them this bit and it's not learned. But once it's learned and they get to that bit, what can they do? Carry on singing. They've now got this continuity. Otherwise, if you start at the beginning, every single thing is new. Think about that. Having blocks where you suddenly hit territory, it's actually the same as driving. Although people are using Waze and Google Maps and goodness knows what else, some people are still relying on their husbands, wives, or the backseat driver. But many of us have been able to silence the people who are giving us directions because the computer's giving directions. But isn't it wonderful? Forgive me for those people who are not London-based, but for those of us who grew up in London, when you said, here we are, we're in Hendon now. But for those of us who start leaving London, and then, you know, we start reaching for our passports as we go over Waterloo Bridge, it's really scary. It's really scary. We have no idea where we're going. We'd far rather get to territory that is familiar. And it's the same for singers. When you get from a bit of music that's shaky and suddenly the next bar you know, my goodness, you feel great about yourself. And you can keep going rather than you as the conductor who's using every trick in the book to use four-wheel drive, a towing machine, trying to just push your choir forward. There's quicksand, there's a tornado, and you're just trying to get them to keep, but they don't know it and the whole thing falls apart. It's marvelous when you get to something that you know. So there are many things that I would like to talk about here. We can come back to this piece. We hope that at conference that we're actually going to use this as part of a service. It would be very, very powerful when a whole group of people who are not trading in these wonderful things that we all trade in would be introduced to this taste. I mean, imagine somebody who's only been brought up with fast food. Think about that. They've lived on McDonald's, kosher, or whatever food. Let's put it differently. A kid, an adult who has only ever had pizza, chicken nuggets, chips, French fries, okay? When you hand them fruit, when they've only been given tinned fruit, and you say, try some creme brulee, and they go, oh my God, that's almost, what is that? It's just eggs, sugar, vanilla. And then somebody who's just all their life been fed overripe bananas, and you say, try this, and they go, what is it? Try it. And they go, okay, that is amazing. What's that? You say, it's called chocolate. So somebody who has always sung, Visham, oopsie daisy, Veshamru, Veshamru, B'nai Yisrael, et Tashabat, la asot et Tashabat, la Dorotam Berit Olam, all together now. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then you suddenly say to them, you know, in the 1800s, there was a different musical language, that if in fact you believe that music must illustrate words, it must underline text, it can word paint, showing what's going on. This is a declaration of God. It comes straight out of the Torah. This is what God said. So that Lewandowski set it, that to me, it actually sounds as though it's plain chant. It actually sounds ancient. it sounds holy. It sounds religious. It sounds, dare I say it, biblical. And then what are you going to do? Start clapping along? Does this make you want to do a dance? You know, again, when asked, people said, no, I wanted to reflect. Which brings up, and I won't go there, I promise, can you only participate if you sing out loud? And the answer is, of course not. Because we all know that we can participate and be deeply engaged in sermons, movies, theatrical productions. The one I love to give, and you should say this when somebody starts arguing with you, but I couldn't sing along. You say, human beings have an infinite capacity to engage with things when they're not making a sound. The example I always give is when, God forbid, there's a missile attack in Israel, a bomb blast in Jerusalem at the Egged bus station, and they go live to the correspondent. So let's say the person is, hi, this is Stephen Glass reporting live from the Egged bus station in Jerusalem. A terrorist attack has just taken. Are you sitting there watching the television and actually saying, hello, my name's Stephen? Of course you're not. You're not joining in. It's not a question and answer. I don't go, hello, my name is Stephen Glass at the Egged bus station. And you go, hello, my name is Stephen Glass at the Egged bus station. I mean, it's ridiculous. Of course not. When you go to a movie, okay, and Daniel Craig says, Bond, James Bond. Do you say in your seat, sitting at the Mill Hill Cinema, Bond, James? It's all ridiculous. Of course you don't. Are you watching the movie? Are you engrossed? Of course you are. When you go to the theater, when you're hearing a newsreader say it, when you're reading a book, do you read it out loud? I mean, maybe you do, but most adults don't. And particularly some of the literature, it would be highly inappropriate for you to read it out loud because you've got your kids in the room. Okay, I've made my point. I'm going to turn to Shema Kolenu. We have 22 minutes left. And here comes Gay. Remember to unmute before you speak. There we go.
Will you forgive me? I have to leave the meeting. I haven't eaten yet, and I need to go. Do you mind? I'll join you the next one.
I don't mind at all, particularly because we're actually about to look at a piece that comes as part of a service of forgiveness.
Well, I've hit it spot on, haven't I? But thank you very much, Stephen.
Gay, it's a pleasure. And you have my email address. Probably more important than anything is that I'm trying to scatter loads of seeds tonight.
Right.
And if there's something either that I didn't bring up or you say, I wish we could have spent more time on, we need to know this because it's your group as much as ours.
No,
so I'd love to hear from you.
Fascinating, but I have to go and eat.
That's fine. We hope you enjoy your meal. We're not going to ask what you're having in case it's fast food.
Okay. Thanks very much. See you later.
It's our pleasure. Thank you, Gay.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye, Sarita. Bye, Joe.
So I'm going to fast track Shema Kolenu. If you want to turn to the music. So let's take it to a higher level. Because we have to say, how are we going to conduct this? Well, I don't think it's 1, 2, 3, sh. I think what Andre taught us before is exactly right for this piece as well. We need one beat before, and since it's a 4/4 bar, we're going to give the third beat. They'll come in on the fourth beat. If you don't know what I mean, this would be a beat of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So to start Shema Kolenu, I would not go and have them sing sh on the fourth beat. I would drop the first beat, that's gone. I would drop the second beat, that's gone. And all I would give is the third beat. So some people say, I can't give I don't know how to give the third beat. So the answer is, give the beats of the full bar and just drop each one of them and practice doing that. So if you do 1, 2, now let's do just 2, 2. Now let's do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now just do 3. 3. You can do 1, 2, 3. You can go sh, ma, and put everything in the same place. But that's not conducting. That's just beating the notes. That's what, if nobody has encouraged you to actually use a universal language, it's your own language. So you end up going v'kabel barachamim uva. Whereas maybe you want v'kabel barach, not baracha. By the way, when they're going v'kabel barachamim, and you say, could you do it smoother? Could you not sing it detached and so forth? But your gesture is, maybe your actual conducting gesture is producing the very thing that you don't want. Just like they're singing softly, but you're conducting loudly. Or you're conducting smooth, but you want it detached. Or you want it smooth and you're conducting detached. So I'm looking through and I'm thinking, let's say they've got the pitches and the rhythms right. Anybody have a problem with this? Shema Koleinu. Mish.
It's not going anywhere in the long notes. It's just kind of pitching a tent and sitting there. So you've got their dynamics on the page to follow anyway, but there's also intention that the ma of Shema has to go to the ko. The lay has to go down to the nu.
So that's exactly right. A singer who has no background, who nobody has introduced the concept that Mish has just introduced to us, will hold a note for a certain length of time. And they may or not hold it for 3 counts, but let's assume that they know it. So they're going to hold the note. But that's not what music is. Music is going forward. And so they might even with their binder, and this is another thing, you have to be watching as well as listening. I've seen this. Shama ko. You actually see that they stop on the note. Shama. So what I would say is that contained in that little bit of notation is something wondrous. Contained in that ma, that 3-beat note, is exactly that, 3 beats. So if you sang 3 beats, you'd get this. Shema. Well, what if you sang those 3 beats, but just held them together and kept the energy? So instead of which is Shema, what if you actually energize through 3 counts? Now you don't want them to go Shema. That's not what I'm talking about. But there's something which is a spinning sound. And of course, it's all about the vowel. It's all about the vowel. So if I said to somebody, forget ma, this is just singing technique. And let's say that they're, a wonderful teacher, or solicitor, or insurance salesman. It doesn't matter. They want to be led into this world which we inhabit. So you want to encourage them, and I want to encourage you to encourage them to realize everything that Mish just said. Firstly, that there's energy inside that ma. It doesn't stop. You're also encouraged not to stop because there's a marking, the hairpin lying over that implies that that R is actually expanding. So they may not know what that means. You may have to demonstrate that this Shema doesn't do anything. This is aggressive. Shema. That's not artistic, it's ugly. But somewhere in between that is not over seasoning the piece, where instead of a teaspoon of cinnamon in your Pesach cinnamon balls, you accidentally tip the whole jar in. But cinnamon balls without cinnamon are just balls. And I picked an unfortunate choice of cookie there. So moving swiftly along. In fact, since we're all friends, I can tell you I'm invited to a birthday party on Sunday. And there's a particular delicacy, which I buy from a bakery, which I'm sort of known for at turning up. And it's a potluck, which is, by the way, my worst type of party ever. And if you're interested in hearing about that, I've got a number of scary stories. You'll probably never come online with me again. Anyway, moving swiftly along, one person, a friend of mine, actually said to me, and Zoe, I hope this isn't appropriate, but I'm just thinking of everybody like you're all friends now. They said to me, Stephen, I hope you're coming on Sunday with your balls. So I said, I never go to any party without my balls. Jo is not finding this funny. Okay, she is. And then, you cannot believe this, that this person actually said, I hope they'll be fresh. My point is that you want to actually listen to what the choir's singing. And I believe that Mish said, Ma can't just be, you can't hang it, just sit on it. It's going somewhere, it's moving. She also pointed out that there's an expansion to the ka. You could actually get the choir to sing without consonants. Because those are the things that are transporting our music. So when you hear somebody going instead of and when you hear somebody going and it's white and it's edgy, you can begin a process of getting people to start becoming aware. That's for another time in terms of what are exercises, what are techniques, what are things that can begin to make your volunteer choir sound professional. Because that's really what you want. You'll say no, because if they sound too good, nobody's going to join in. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. You don't want something that you're deliberately maintaining out of tune, incorrect rhythms, and it's not a pleasure to listen to because you're fearful that if it sounds too good, nobody's going to join in. That's just ridiculous. The people themselves deserve to be taken and have their potential fulfilled. Wouldn't you want the best for your kids? Wouldn't you want your student to go as far as they could? You wouldn't deliberately hold them back. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm conducting this and I'm listening for whether or not it does anything. Does it move me? You're allowed to say to your choir, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Not in a nasty way, but you have to ask to say, what are you saying? I mean, this is the first time I've even really talked about that. What are we even doing this for? Another time. What does it mean? Kolenu is really our voices, but there's something more than that. It's not just hear our voices. You could yell, are you listening to me? There's something else going there. So, the translation you have in your prayer book might be different from this, but this teaches us something. Do you want a sanitized Shema Kolenu? Or do you want something that's emotional? And when does it become contrived? You don't want them, cracking their voices. Shema Kolenu. I mean, it's ridiculous. But between what I just did and, something that's been cleaned up with a sort of, kitchen cleaner, kills all 99.9 dessert, do they still have that 90? Is it dead? Was that? Vim, not Vim. Anyway, whatever. Then, what are you going to do with the breathing? The idea of breathe wherever you want to is very interesting. People are so concerned about telling their choir, you can't breathe, you can't breathe. What about saying, you just can't breathe here, otherwise breathe wherever you want to? I loved it. I loved that. So this is what I used to do. The people who could never get through to Nu without, falling on the floor and suddenly, you're having to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation in the middle of the Kol Nidre service, I would say, oh, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a breath way before I need a breath. I mean, everybody can get through that phrase, but in fact, the one that's famous Even that I've got a solution for. Let's stick with Shema. This is what I would do. In all music, I know where I can't breathe. But I know that everybody's going to breathe and be dying out by lay. If they've got a problem, they're going to do this. So I'm saying to myself, okay, I'm going to be somebody who breathes in the middle of ma, because nobody else is going to be as ridiculous as that. And so long as I then rejoin the singing without anybody noticing, I then got an extra breath. So singing, if I was singing soprano, I could go on, because I got an extra breath. So if you haven't come across this term, most people have been told this, most people refer to it as staggered breathing. In other words, everybody's breathing wherever they want to, and that's fine. In fact, when you do that, an audience thinks that the choir's never taking a breath. If you wanted, you could get this. It's too high for me. I'll do the bass part. If that's what you want, you just tell people you must not breathe after nu, you must not breathe after nai. Otherwise, you can breathe wherever you want. So everybody's singing nu Adonai. And they're all going Adonai Elohe. You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. Look at Chus, second line. So that's real music. It doesn't go. Imagine, in fact, if you were harmonizing this and you only knew a few chords. Now look at what the composer does. Second line, chus. He doesn't go chus, which is a tonic position chord. In other words, root position chord, tonics on the bottom, G minor. He doesn't do that. It's first inversion. Listen to how vulnerable that is. You've done Nai Eloheinu. Suddenly, see that? That's weakened. That's weakened. Chus. Take pity on us. But it's a setup because it's not. It's. Do you change chemically when you hear that? I really hope that you do. You should feel a chemical change in your body when you're going from to and back. And the fact that he doesn't even do, it's almost as though you're saying, take pity and be compassionate to us. And it's almost as though you're saying, yes, I will take pity on you. And I will be compassionate with you. And the reason why is because it seems for the first time, we suddenly have a major sonority. It goes into the major. Look, this is poignant. It's going to be okay. And there's a lovely cadence, a normal cadence. It's going to be okay. But maybe it's not going to be okay. The anxiety begins again. And it's not, in my opinion, barachamim. That doesn't do anything. There's no emotion. There's no humanity. There's no vulnerability. There's no doubt. There's no question in our minds. We might not be here tomorrow. So there's an opportunity as a conductor to go, right, v'kabel barachamim uvratzon. There's tension there in the music. And your job as a conductor is to inspire the choir and to reach out to the people listening and change them. The reason why you're conducting music like this, the reason why you're inspiring your choir is because we want them to leave changed. Now, changed might mean entertained. It might mean connecting through singing together. It might be, as I would claim for this, listening to something that's holy. Listening to something that's holy and being transported into a mindset and a sound world that truly takes them to somewhere that they don't go during the week, or that they can only go to when they're in a holy place. So you have an opportunity. And Mish's point before applies even more here. There's something tense. There's something almost insistent. There's something that wants to be brought out. And look at the opportunity that you have. To be continued. With 3 minutes to go, Zoe, you're looking at me that it's not 3 minutes to go.
No, you're absolutely right. It is.
Okay. With 3 minutes to go, can I get everybody to unmute their microphones? Helen, we'd love to hear from you too. Yeah, I know. There we go. Sarit, do you want to unmute? You can. Can I just go round everybody so that everybody feels that they actually had some voice? And Sarita, we're including you. Either something that worked for you, something you particularly liked, something that you didn't like, something that you would hope that we have a chance to do more of next time. And if you feel that you're put on the spot, you're allowed to just say, I was just happy to be here. I mean, this is not a test. It's not an audition. So I'm going to start with Sarita.
Oh, great. Well, I know nothing, so I learned a huge amount. Thank you very much.
Let's just go in the order on the screen. Sarit?
Yes, first of all, it's the first time that I meet so many conductors, Jewish conductors, I think. We're all Jewish, I think, here in London. Although I think, as I understand, you're at Canada at the moment?
I'm in Toronto.
Toronto, yeah. I lived 3 years in Vancouver, I'm sure you.
So you're just happy to meet us all?
I'm happy to meet you all and also to hear other opinions, other ideas, many of the things you said actually resonate with me. It's the same struggle and conversation I have with my choir and explaining exactly the happy clappy thing and how they should be open to other things. They used to sing for 15 years the same music and they didn't change it ever. And then I came when I said we cannot continue singing the same music. Anyway,
so this is going to be a very useful discussion. Some of you may also have
sorry about that.
It says,
yes,
I'd like to bring new things onto the menu, but everybody says we just want you to serve the same things week in and week out. And you're saying we have an opportunity. So Sarit, that was great.
Yes.
Andre, do you want to go next? And if you
Yes.
can mute once you've spoken, it would help. Sorry.
Okay. Yes. I really liked the what you were saying about the importance of the music meaning something and not being like fast food. If you could inform rabbis and congregational council members of that, that would be much appreciated.
So I'm going to jump in there because, again, Andre's raised something really interesting. So I think we all want suggestions, advice, tactics, solutions, perspective on what's worked for us, things that we've tried, how you educate people, and that includes the congregation, maybe your soloist. So in weeks to come, we need to be looking at that, the challenges that people have been facing, or that you feel you just keep coming up against a brick wall. What are things that have worked? How might we be able to address that challenge? That's really helpful, Andre. Who's next? That looks like Sloan Voss.
Sioned.
Sioned, thank you.
Sioned, in Sussex, not London.
Oh,
thank
pleasure
you
to
very
meet you,
much.
and forgive me for assuming that.
I'm sorry I shan't be able to make next time, because this has really whetted my appetite. And it's very nice to see the Vishamru actually as a score. I learnt it a cappella, and I'm glad I think we got it more or less right. As concerns congregational and rabbinic, we're very lucky in BHRS. We have a lot of support. We have different traditions, and we're trying to bring them together so that we all feel that we all belong and we can all take part. And thank you very much for giving us a good start.
So that's another very useful point, because we're all actually, we either be presented with recipes that we're expected to cook and serve every week. We've talked about the idea of wanting to bring in, or some people, the challenge of bringing in other things. The question is, can you simultaneously be doing quote unquote art music, or music that is adopting a performance practice and values related to this sort of choral music? And does any of that apply if you're teaching your choir some pop, some modern American stuff? Do you have to throw ideas about what it means, how it's pronounced, and how you perform it if you're singing a unison Debbie Friedman song? Is it okay to say, no, it's fine, it's just Debbie Friedman? Is that right? Is that correct? Because if you're saying, when I say these words and Lewandowski sets them, I take care to ABC, you're saying Debbie Friedman's music doesn't warrant that? Or what do we do with that? And what do we do if there are some conductors who actually don't sing her music, and there are other conductors that say that forms a large part of our repertoire? Thank you, that was useful. Helen, you're next. We can't hear you, but you look fabulous. So I'll come back to you. Oh, there you are. No, so your mic's not working. So you might want to just scribble some signs or just go into your settings. I'm going to move on. Millie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, Millie.
I enjoyed it a lot, and I was interested in what you were saying about the accuracy with the Hebrew, because many of the choir we have been singing since they were teenagers, and you know, they get quite sloppy about the Hebrew. We have one 90-something-year-old who keeps pulling them up short and saying, "Do you realise what this means?" and questioning the pronunciation, and also where the breaks come in the words, that it has to make sense. You can't just stop somewhere.
So very helpful. Something that we have to address in weeks to come is the issue of when you're actually up against time. We get so busy learning the piece, we often are not talking about what's the spirit of the music, what do the words mean, where does it come? Something I put on the list you haven't seen. What response are we hoping for from the people listening to this? And conductors say to me, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, why are you doing this piece of music?" They say, "Because it's on the list." "Do you love it?" They say, "I can't stand it." I say, "What do you? None of this makes sense." So actually stopping to actually say to yourself, "Why are you performing this version of this piece?" And they say, "Because I can't get hold of any other music," which is another question. Where do you get your music? If you say, "We desperately need a new something or other," I mean, you know, does Amazon have it? No. Does Littlewoods even exist anymore? Debenhams? Harrods? They've got a Reformed Synagogue music, Jewish liturgical choral section? Probably not. Joe, you're up.
So I found this really interesting because Gay and Gillian, who have dropped off, are on to help me. I've just taken over music in our synagogue, and we have probably half a dozen bands strong of just people that sing and try to keep services going. It's definitely not a choir. I'm probably the most musical because I can actually read music.
Right, right.
So I just, for me, it just opens my eyes to how much we've got to do.
And there's a beautiful thing there, because Joe, in fact, describes a situation where some of us have actually been, which is that you're at the birth of something. And when she says, I believe that my singers are ready to graduate to something else, or she's encouraged to say, you know what, we love the occasions when you sing. Maybe there are 2 moments at the Kol Nidre service this year where the group could do something. And she says, that's amazing. And then says, now what am I going to do with them? You guys may be the ones that can provide the love, the support, the input to say, this is an excellent congregational version of Ya'aleh. This is a beautiful Kihinei Kachomer. What I found was that just these 8 bars in Kol Nidre, I get a lot of mileage from it because we actually sing it 3 times in our synagogue. Therefore, if you just keep your choir a gentle hum, it's unison, but they're going. Or what we're going to do is we're going to just give them a taste of what it could be like by learning, and it might take us 2 minutes to go. Which is the old style of humming in 4 parts before the Kol Nidre prayer. And everybody over the age of 60 goes, oh, I haven't heard it like that for years. And suddenly, you know, they're running up to get the autograph of Jo and her singers at the end of Kol Nidre. Thank you, Jo. That's excellent. Mish, you're on.
So there are definitely specific practical things that I've taken away, like the idea of not recording parts, but recording, in effect, mini rehearsals, which I really love. But I think a bigger thing that I've taken away and enjoyed is your continuous focus on the humanity of the people that we're dealing with, and that when they're not delivering, I'll use a cruel word, when they're not delivering what you hoped for or what you're trying to get to, that they may be not delivering it with the absolute best of human intentions. And your focus on staying loving and open-hearted, I think you said, is a really handy reminder in dark times.
And I would just like to take that actually beyond choir rehearsals, because we are human beings, but we have to assume that we are going to behave with the best of intentions, and we should behave with kindness, and we can't do it all the time. But one of the major lessons of life, and we'll talk about this another time, is the ability to surrender in peace. And everybody that I grew up with surrenders in defeat. But in fact, for those of us who've had extremely stressful lives for whatever reason, to say that for a lot of the things that we're involved in, we should do the best that we can with very good intentions, and then just let the universe decide what's going to happen. Surrender in peace. If that's a concept that's new to you, it was new to me 2 years ago. It took me living more than half my life to find out that you can actually surrender in peace. And in fact, it's nothing to do with you, because you did the best that you could with good intentions. Hi, Julie.
Hi.
What worked for you? What would you like to say? A comment, anything?
Big thank you to everyone, and it's lovely to be part of this. Although probably even more fraudulently than Jo, I'm down here in Cornwall in the smallest, the furthest, and the motliest community ever there was, with reform, but the singing mostly comes from United Shul emigres, and probably as the member of this tiny community who grew up with Malavani and Hershtik and in a house of Chazanot.
Me too.
I'm the singer that rouses So I've been sent along to rouse even more. And what was really interesting for me was singing, as I've done in not shawl choirs, of being able to marry, through what we've learned tonight, a lot of exactly what has been my experience of singing in community choirs to how might I inspire people in our dear Shawl. Please all do come and have a cream tea with us down here in the southwest. We could do with some extra people.
So for me, that's probably the highlight of the night, the idea that there are some places around the UK that are still doing herring and egg on little sort of bridge rolls. But if you go to Julie's synagogue, you get a full cream tea with clotted cream, scones.
But then, beautifully, you could come down to our Seder the week after next, and there will be 50 of us having as Hamisher a Seder as you'd have anywhere in northwest London, and the food will be exactly the same. And that's just it. We're trying to move this very small community into something a little closer to our up the line twins in Plymouth and Exeter. We're so far out of the way, but there's a lot of enthusiasm.
Well, I'd like to just say you're in the right place, because this is a group probably better than any that I know who are in a position to provide you with support and provide you with ideas. And when things seem to be challenging, they'll say, it's okay, Julie, it gets better, because that's exactly what happened the first time we introduced this. But stick with it, because this tune is something, by the way, those people that you mentioned, if they genuinely did grow up with those people, then maybe you should introduce some of the dishes that they used to hear those people sing. And both Naftali Herstik and Joseph Malavani had some great melodies when they were leading services. So maybe we should be introducing them into Cornwall.
Yeah, and if I could get a full choral Shehechionu going without having to sing all of the parts myself.
And do you sing them simultaneously?
I not quite, but I do what I can.
Julie, thank you for that. Is Katie with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Can everybody hear her? Go ahead, Katie.
Hi, yeah, sorry, my camera doesn't seem to want to work on this. But just want to say thank you. It was really interesting. I really, I was interested what you were talking about. Someone else mentioned it, but especially with the pronunciation and the Hebrew, because working in the job that I do here, it was I came from a musician standpoint, and my Hebrew wasn't as good as some others. So that's been a really interesting learning curve, and I always was made aware as a musician that actually what you said about the word.
Katie, I'm going to interrupt, because if we were on the air, the announcer or the TV presenter would say that it's a poor connection and we'll have to get back to you. I don't think that many of the people online could actually hear what you're saying, but I gathered that some of the things to do with the Hebrew accentuation, and there were some other points were things that interested you, and obviously we'll be looking at that again. I'm going to, if that's okay, go to Julianne. Hello.
Hi. I think I feel like I'm the biggest fraud out of all of us, because I'm actually I'm not Jewish.
Welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you. I joined the same shul as where Katie's working as an accompanist 3 years ago, and I'm going to give you Katie's life news, which is I'm her maternity cover in a few months. So I'm stepping in as conductor just for a very short period of time. So I was kind of thrown into the deep end a few years ago, so everything was new to me, the liturgy, the music, everything. So I'm coming from an operatic background. So just learning about all of the music and the different versions, anything is completely new to me, and I'm finding it extremely interesting.
Great to hear. Truly, the principles that I hope that we are going to be trading in over the next few weeks. And obviously when I see you all at convention, they're universal. This is no different than how you would do a Fauré Requiem. It's no different to how you would think about a piece of John Rutter. It's frankly no different to what top people are doing when they're preparing for their debut in Wicked or any other. It's just music making, which is universal principles related to pitch, vowel, rhythm, intent, healthy vocal singing. And when it comes to choirs, balance, blend, breathing, interpretation, watching the conductor, singing with, and so on and so forth. You're very welcome. I think I can speak on behalf of everybody that anything that anybody does to elevate and to contribute to us in any way they can in terms of the Jewish musical world is a hero, or in your case, a heroine. So you're very, very welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And Cantor Zoe Jacob.
Can I just butt in before Zoe, because I've got Helen's feedback when her microphone wasn't working. She's messaged me. So
thanks, Helen.
Okay, Helen says, sorry, I don't see to get blah, blah. I've only just started conducting the choir, having sung in it for a while, and I'm very aware that I need to work on my Hebrew so that I can shape the phrases according to the text as well as the shape of the music. Regarding the comments on singing modern music alongside classical, we sing a real mix, and I think everything has to be phrased well, always as beautifully as possible. Thanks for the technical tips. I'm going to try the staggered breathing technique from next week. Thanks a lot. Looking forward for the next one.
Wow. Thank you, Helen. And Zoe.
So I was also struck by the idea of recordings being done in a musical way. That's really given me food for thought, not only as far as choirs are concerned, but in all the different things that I'm sometimes called to do. I'm really caught up at the moment in the idea of when you fix something and when you don't. And Stephen, maybe at some point we'll continue to have a conversation about that. I'm struck by the idea of wanting things to be authentic and real and serious. And also knowing that when a community of 200 singers are going to sing over you, what do you do, and when do you decide to change and when do you not? And I love the idea of you can breathe anywhere but not here, which is going to make me be the person that goes, but that's the only place I now want to breathe, which I assume therefore means all of our choir members are going to do the same thing. So those are kind of things that I really loved. But the whole conversation, and actually having this conversation as a group kind of around the country of all of us kind of trying to pull in the same direction, to me feels really, really exciting and a very exciting beginning. So I want to thank you, Stephen, for helping to make that happen and for sharing your wisdom and giving us your time and all of the preparation time as well to get here. If I can I just clarify a couple of things before you end? So I just want to clarify with you and with everyone else hearing that what we're hoping is that as many people as possible will bring this music to their choirs in the hope of doing some work with the choirs on it, and then bringing as many members of the choir as possible to Shirei Chagigah. And if that's one member, it's fine. And if it's 20 members, it's fine. It's not about bring the biggest choir possible. We're never going to make you sing something on your own, but to do the work on the music in order to then come and be part of a massed choir, which I think is an opportunity that most of our choirs don't get the chance to do very often. So just to say, the hope is, because our next meeting now isn't until May, that if you have time, you'll be able to work some of these things into your rehearsals. And it may be that you can't get to all of them, or some are more fitting for you than others, and you'll make those decisions. But just to say that that's kind of the hope. And that then there will be space during Shirei Chagigah, both for workshops that are for our choir members and workshops for us as a group of leaders. And so just to kind of clarify how this moves towards May and then moves towards July. And Sarita and I can certainly answer more questions specifically about Shirei Chagigah, but just to kind of make sure that that's really clear.
So I'll just add my final two cents. That really provides two areas of excitement, because obviously we're going to meet again in May, but what Zoe is describing is something amazing, which is not only do your choir members have the opportunity to do something which is truly inspirational, to stand as one of 16 altos, not just the only one, and to actually sing a sound where they can hear the other parts and suddenly realize how their part contributes to the whole is very exciting for them. But what's really exciting is exciting for us. It's exciting for us to meet each other, to share the energy that you can't really get the way we're doing this, and to ask questions and to be allowed to take a detour because we've got time. And by July, we're going to have a much better idea how to use the time of conference in a way that really serves us. So my wrap up is just the following. I just try to sort of cast a number of different seeds onto the soil. And some of them may take root and some of them may not. And some of them, you may decide that's not really for me. But I hope you realize that whether it's addressing who sings, how they sing it, how you can introduce music, where you should get music, how you decide if it's the right music, things to do with politics, things to do with rehearsal technique, how you invest in your choir, whatever you think about, we can talk about. And something that I say to people, and this is my final thought, if you don't join us in May, and if you don't join us in July, where else are you going to go? It's a huge thank you to Zoe, and a massive thank you for Sarita for doing all of the back office and organizational stuff. You can write to her or Zoe with questions about conference. You can write to me with concerns, criticisms, compliments, anything that you want to that maybe you don't feel comfortable saying publicly. And we're obviously going to be seeking from you a little bit of a guidance, a nudge of how best to spend the May session in such a way that we can get the most out of that and then make the most out of conference in July. So with that, thank you all. Have a very restful night, and I'll see you in May.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Stephen.